we're at a point, or we were, where you have these, you had this show where it said it's not going to lick itself, and there's kids there, and the cops go, I'm not getting involved in this. Even though it is illegal, discernibly codified, the cops won't do anything about it because the culture is fractured and there's no clear winner. The police are only going to do what they think the majority would support. If Sound of Freedom is winning, if Angel Studios is winning, if shows like ours, if Cast Brew Coffee is winning, if Bud Light is failing, eventually people are going to say, I'm here to be on the winning side. Law enforcement's going to come out and be like, we're going to go arrest the person breaking the law. It's illegal for unmarried women to skydive in Florida on Sunday. Is a cop going to arrest a woman who skydives on Sunday? Of course not. Why? It's illegal because the law actually doesn't matter. What matters is what police are willing to enforce. So if we win the culture war, then the police are going to enforce what the people want enforced.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, the part of government is the consent of the people, right? So if you disagree with law, not only can you fight it, but also your town can start to say, like, this doesn't make sense. I mean, there are all kinds of old laws on the books. The skydiving in Florida one might be an example of things that we would not allow or accept. I believe there's a town in Connecticut where your husband's allowed to beat his wife on the town hall steps during the day, and that never got repealed. It's just there. Wow. Now, if this happened, we would all be appalled. Like, we know some things are wrong, and I can't say why that one was on the books ever, but so much of what we do is just choosing to say, like, I'm not going to give into this anymore. And again, I think it's important to go back to the fact that for a long time, you know, you'd get these things, companies doing something you didn't agree with, but there were no alternatives, right? Like, I remember, I can't even remember, like, if you wanted to boycott a shoe company, well, that shoe company is also owned by this company that's also doing this. And like, we saw this a little bit with Bud Light, that, you know, some people were like, well, I'll buy this one. And it actually is all under the Anheuser-Busch umbrella. So maybe we give credit to the internet here for being active and alerting people to sort of the network of companies. But it is really interesting to see people actively seeking out change and reviewing like what they're being told to do and saying, I don't want to anymore.
I think it happens. It doesn't happen at once, too. It'll happen like probably like a 7-year lag. You make a movie that changes like a 9-year-old's mind. And then when they're 16, that's when the power begins to shift.
Yes. Absolutely.
Do you guys see that with your own kids?
Well, yeah, totally. And that's the reason that we started this, is because we could see that this was a long game, right? Like, the way that we were going to actually change the world for our children and for their children was by not by going and coming here to DC and lobbying and fighting over red and blue politics, but it was just in our home with our kids, telling really great stories that help them understand true principles.
When The Dark Knight Rises came out, I was at CPAC that year or sometime around there, and I remember sitting in on this panel discussion and them saying, you know, if you're conservative and you want your children who are interested in politics to make a difference, you actually shouldn't send them to DC, you should send them to Hollywood. And I wish I could give credit to whoever said that. I've forgotten the panelist's name at this point. But it's interesting because they're basically making the point 10 years ago, and you guys said Angel was founded in 2013, that you guys ultimately proved, which is like, if you want to redirect culture, you need people who have those values in a position to make that content. I mean, it's we know a lot of people who are creative and who have ideas, but I don't remember who was on the show talking about the infrastructure behind movie production, like all the things you need to rent and the film equipment. Like, there has to be stepping stones to build this, and ultimately you guys have proven redirecting the energy is the
important
thing.
Steve Jobs says that the most powerful person in the world is a storyteller. That he's famous for that statement. And you can see this with Sound of Freedom. Alejandro Monteverde goes, and Mexican guy, grew up, was affected by cartels.
His dad and his brother were murdered
by a cartel, and he builds this movie and this story to help unite and to fight this issue. And Neil was just telling me last night that some bill in, what state was it?
I think it was Wisconsin
or something, like a local legislator put up a bill that's called the Sound of Freedom bill, and they're changing laws because of this film. And
there was a law enforcement officer down in Texas who, after watching the film, started classes in their community, and they're teaching teenage girls what signs to look for, how pedophiles attack through social media.
Those classes are happening all over, like
classic
churches,
QAnon, right-wing extremism, just raging
Protect
on.
your family, yeah.